Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your busy schedules to join us for our webinar this afternoon on media training for municipal councils. We're just going to give everybody a couple minutes here to get settled in, filter into the room, and get set up. And Cole and Michaela will be able to get us underway in just a minute or two. Looks like we just have a few stragglers here, so we'll just give it another minute and then we'll get going.
All right, everybody. I'm going to kick it off here. This is Alberta Council's 2025 media training. Hope everyone can see me and hear me well. Today we'll be going over just sort of how to interact with the media and some basic tips that I've accumulated over, a career interacting with media both on the provincial and federal level. So the first thing I want to do is just give an introduction for myself and Michaela for those who don't know us, who've never interacted with us before. You'll see my bio here. I've been working in Alberta and Saskatchewan and Ontario politics in addition to some federal work here for just over 15 years now. Lots of experience in conservative politics. And, over time, I have done more and more media work. Actually, after I graduated university in 2014, I started by doing CTV Saskatoon Morning Live, where they'd have me on CTV at 7 in the morning and ask me about federal politics as it related to Saskatchewan. And that's where a lot of this work all started. After that, actually had a column in the Huffington Post Alberta as well, where I talked about prairie politics. And then, as my political career progressed, I started being asked to do more and more media appearances. Where now, at this phase, I'm doing a regular TV panel at CPAC every Thursday when the House is sitting, in addition to some other appearances on Global News and CTV and wherever else they'll have me. So that's a bit of the introduction here for my political work and the media work that I've been doing here. That hopefully we can, impart some wisdom on how to interact with media and get your point across properly. But for now, I'll hand it over to Michaela to give herself a bit of an introduction here.
Well, thanks, Cole. So my name is Michaela Fry. I was just looking through the attendees. Some of you I recognize, some of you I don't. So welcome. I've been with Alberta Council for since March, I think, is when I started. But before that, I was working in the Premier's office as well as an elected member of the Legislative Assembly. I represented Brooks Medicine Hat. So that was an honor, but now it's time to move on. So I have two wonderful kids. One of them is 2, and the other one is 9 weeks, or sorry, 7 weeks old. So just kind of doing the popping in between naps, I guess. But it's been really fun to work with Alberta Council for stuff like this. On the media side, I've been participants in media training just like you. I think every politician goes through some sort of media training on the fly. Some of it's a baptism by fire, and some of it's a little more organized like this. So we're hoping that we can impart some wisdom upon you on maybe so you don't fall into the same traps that some of your colleagues do. I have appeared on several media channels like CBC, CTV, 6:30 Ched, The Danielle Smith Show, back when that was a thing, and more, Ryan Jesperson, and so on. Most recently, I was doing some panel work with CBC West of Center, and hopefully going to be taking on some more of that work in the coming days. So, really looking forward to diving into that with all of you. And yeah, take it away, Cole.
Sure. So I just wanted to ask too, Michaela, in any of your experience as, an MLA, or as staff, if you could just talk about your general experience, how it's been with media, and how you found it, sort of the interactions with reporters and producers back and forth, and what your overall experience has been.
Well, I'll tell you right now, it's a lot easier being a pundit than it is being elected. So,
That's right. That's right.
um, pundits get their questions ahead of time. They usually want us to be prepared and look good. That's not quite the case when you're elected. So, I think just having a good rapport with journalists is a really good place to start. Alberta Council does a lot of PR work as well, so we help a lot of clients liaise with the media and maintain that relationship as well. So I've been doing some of that on the side. And it's been really crazy to see the difference between being elected and dealing with media versus being not elected and dealing with media. So, yeah.
Well, that's excellent. I imagine being on both sides gives you the ability to sort of see it from all directions. And with that, I think we'll jump straight in. And Michaela, if there's anything you want to add while I'm talking here about the overview, feel free to raise your hand and jump in as I go through a bit of an overview here. So at some point in your career, whether it's as an elected counselor or as anyone representing, a member-based association or organization, you're going to have to talk to the media at some point, or, in order to get your organization or your constituencies' opinions and views across, media is going to be part of that conversation. Whether that takes the form of it being an online news outlet or something more traditional like CTV or CBC or a podcast or something like that, it's going to be something that happens again and again. And the idea of this session here is to make you prepared for that every time that it happens. It won't always go smoothly. I can tell you from personal experience. I've literally forgotten what I was talking about while a TV camera was on me before. So there's a big room for error here, but there's also the opportunity that as you get more reps in, as you do this more frequently, you will get better at it. And here we're trying to give you some tips. But as a city or town councilor, a reeve, or as someone representing a larger member-based association or group, you know what your constituents and your members are most concerned with. Like they're telling you every day. So if something in the news pops up that you think you're going to be asked about, you're already kind of briefed. You know what issues are going to pop up because you have firsthand experience, and this is kind of why journalists will want to talk to you in the first place. But with that in mind, I will say, like, I'm out in Ottawa, and a lot of the journalists I deal with, most of them are just doing their jobs like anyone else. They're really just trying to get some information across and put their stories together. There are others that are more right-wing or more left-wing journalists, and they do have their own biases, like everyone does, but some of them do have their stories written before they even talk to you. So part of this overview is to help you discern like when that's happening and when it isn't. What's a good faith effort and what isn't. So we want to keep that in mind while we're interacting with the media so we can make sure that we get our points across, whether it's in print, in TV, or online. So here's a few things to remember when you're first contacted or newly elected or newly in your role representing a group and you hear from a reporter for the first time. They might not know you from a hole in the wall. So you just got elected, and they might have researched your campaign a little bit and seen some of the things that you were running on or positions that your group holds, but they don't know you personally. And the idea should always be like the idea with doing media should be to do more media, to get back there in the public sphere so people can see your work on a regular basis. Because as important as digital advertising and the online world is now, and I'm a purveyor of that stuff, so I'll never undersell the importance of it. But traditional media is how a lot of people still get their news. especially in the older age range. And you want to be doing everything you can to show how you're representing your community. So the more coverage you get, the more opportunities your voters and supporters have to see you doing your work and advocating for them. So the first thing that I'll suggest, and I do this myself, is I have a list of journalists that I talk to on a regular basis and those who contact me. I have their phone number, their email address, the outlet they work for, and the last thing that they wrote that I was featured in. This way, when a topic comes back up or a reporter comes circling around again, asking me about an issue in the news, I know exactly who I talked to, what I said to them, and when I said it. This is just a good reference point, like for one, just cataloging your own work and to remember what you said last time, so you don't accidentally end up contradicting yourself without even knowing it. Um, Another point I'll add here is that you want to conduct your interviews in person as often as you can. Sometimes it's not easy to go in the studio, especially if you represent, a more rural constituency or there's not a TV studio anywhere nearby. But it's best if you can appear on camera. They're using footage of you. It's on a 6 p.m. broadcast or an afternoon broadcast. It's good to have that visual out there, and it's easier to read a journalist's intent more in person than it is, over the phone or over Zoom or Teams. Michaela, let's have you jump in here.
I would also say too, like make the journalist do the work. If they want to talk to you,
Yeah.
and especially if it's something you don't really want to talk about, but you want to be available because that's your job as an elected official, make them work a little bit. Make them come to the event, make them find you, make them come and come to your office and stand outside, right? And like make them come in and get the footage that they want. Don't make it too easy, but on the other side of that is don't make it too hard either. So make sure you're responding to journalists. I think like keeping that good rapport will make sure that the in-person interviews are done in good faith and everything will be ducky. But yeah, don't make it too easy on those journalists. They have a job
No,
to do as well.
that's right. That's right. We all have a job to do, and that's a good thing too to just establish, like, a better working relationship with journalists. If you're inviting them to a community event or anything that's happening in your constituency or in the neighborhood, that's just a good practice generally. And then it can also, if they are shooting something like B-roll for their story, whatever it might be on, like, that's your B-roll. That's B-roll footage that you are in among the community, which looks better than you standing by yourself in front of a camera, right? But another tip I will give here is you don't want to overly rehearse. So you know your own voice, you know what you sound like when you're just talking normally to people, and that's probably when you make your best points, when you're more casual and relaxed and can go at your own pace. So I would practice, like, if you know you're going to have an interview, you should write down and practice what you're going to say, but don't betray your own personality too much. You want to be able to talk in the same cadence and rhythm you do when you're normally having a conversation. You want to be professional, but you don't want to be so robotic that a reporter doesn't want to talk to you again, right? You want to keep this virtuous circle going where they come back to you because you have interesting things to say and you represent your community well. So for in-person interviews, there's usually a few things I like to keep in mind here, particularly when I'm doing media. If I am asked to go to a studio and appear like on a more formal set with a chair or a desk, one of the things that I like to think of and just ask the producers, where am I looking? Am I looking at you or am I looking into the camera? Sometimes it's different. At the beginning of an interview, I've been asked to, address the camera and introduce myself, and then I'd have to talk to the reporter afterwards. Sometimes there's just a camera over the reporter's shoulder, and they're shooting directly at you, and you're talking to the reporter. Different outlets have different ways of doing things, so it's always good to ask. And just so you know what the footage is going to look like, and so you're not, staring off into space when someone's interviewing you. But a few more tips for the in-person interviews that I'd outline here is it's okay to ask a journalist what they mean by their question. So if you don't know what the question means, you can ask for clarification. Too many people have slipped up by answering a question that wasn't really asked. And to that note, you want to do your best to avoid open-ended questions. So I think we've all seen events where someone gets up to ask a question, but they're more making a statement than they are asking a question. We see this at political conventions all the time. Journalists do the same thing, where they're bringing up an issue to just get your stance on it, but they're not really asking you a direct question. You are more than allowed to be like, what's the actual question? What are you actually asking me? Because if you are interacting with a hostile, interviewer, which I think is few and far between for the most part, especially on the more local level, um, you're gonna find out pretty quick when they just want you to potentially say something inflammatory instead of actually asking you a genuine question. So it's more than okay to ask for clarification on what the question actually is instead of being asked to pontificate and speculate wildly on some hypothetical. You can also reject hypothetical questions. You don't have to accept the premise of, if X happens, what will happen to Y? That's not a dance you really have to do. And as an elected official, no one expects you to engage in hypotheticals. You can stick to the facts of the case and what you actually do know more than posturing on hypotheticals because that just doesn't help anyone and doesn't help with future work. Um, this next one is a tricky one because journalists will leave space, but the best thing that I've found is to know when to stop talking. It can be very hard, especially, I think everyone gets nervous in media interviews, especially on a larger scale. You don't know what question is going to be asked, especially if you're an elected official. But you know the points that you're trying to make, and that's all you have to do. It may resemble a casual conversation, but they are trying to get information and quotes from you. It's not actually a conversation. You're both at work. So it's the journalist's job to keep the conversation going so they can get more quotes and information from you. It's not your job to keep talking so they can get more information. They're going to keep asking you questions. So when you've made your point and feel like you've sufficiently got your point across, you can stop and move on. They're going to ask you a next question. That's not going to stop. So give yourself time to breathe and give them time to breathe too. And then it usually comes out in the wash. Michaela.
And on that too, I would just say my least favorite question a journalist ever asks you is, do you have anything else to add? Is there anything
Mhm.
else you'd like to say? Because at the end of an interview, you've usually said all you need to say. You've answered their questions, presumably. You've had a good conversation, get back and forth, and then they'll always leave that last question. Is there anything else we haven't covered or anything you'd like to add? That the answer to that question is always no. For me, because that's the easiest way to slip up. The easiest way to slip up is to start pontificating, as Cole said, about something that you never intended on talking about. You ramble on, so the answer to that question is always, no, thank you. Have a great day. Thank you for the interview. That's my rule personally. I don't know, Cole, what do you do in that situation? But I always say no.
Well, that's like that's a really good practice because it is leaving the floor to you to talk about whatever you like, whatever you could possibly want to. And if you've established some rhythm, you might find yourself tempted to talk about something else because you're like, I'm on a roll here. I'm going to keep it going. But it's best to usually resist that temptation, as rich as it is sometimes. And I've fallen victim to that too. But this is why we write our notes in advance because we know what our main talking points are. And if there's one line I think that I have that's really good, when they ask me if I have anything else I want to say, I'll repeat that line just to really enforce that, like, I'm sticking to my message here. I know what my community cares about, and that's what I want to talk about. And usually that gets through. You should have an objective of what are the main points you want to see in print or on camera afterwards. And you might not get it, but you want to get as close as possible to that without any collateral damage or talking about issues that are off topic or not advantageous to you. Another item that I'll add here is just basic body language. Like you'd never want to go on camera with sunglasses on or a hat or something like that. Winter, I think we're allowed, if you're wearing a toque in the winter and you're outside during an interview, I think that's fine. But generally, if you wouldn't go door knocking wearing it, then usually you don't want to appear on camera with it. Sunglasses, hat drawn low. I would avoid stuff like that. And body language is just keeping, you know, um, your body language open to the speaker so they know that this is a friendly interview and not an adversarial thing. Michaela.
And I would just say from a women's perspective as well, for these in-person interviews, things like think about how you're presenting yourself, your hair and makeup, the camera, this is for men too. The camera really washes you out. So add more than you think you need. That goes for Zoom interviews, whatever, but just add a little extra. Also, when it comes to those in-studio interviews, it's always good to ask where you're going to be sitting.
Oh
Getting
yeah.
your staff to ask, what's the background going to look like? Because you don't want to show up in a green suit in front of a green screen, right? So there's things that you can ask in advance, and don't be afraid to ask those questions because the journalists are actually happy to answer them, and those are usually really easy procedural questions to ask the producer. But yeah, I usually ask questions like, what's expected of me? Um, where are we going to be doing this interview? Um, will I be sitting or standing? Because those things matter, especially as a woman for your wardrobe choice. So don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good tip. During the election, the federal election in April, I was, at the end of this U-shaped table, right? So you had a side profile of me at the camera, like for like 3 hours, when it's showing the whole table. Otherwise, the cameras across the other cameras across the table from you. So angles and things are, they're something to be aware of just for visuals and how you come across. Let's move on here. Okay, online interviews. This is a big one because this is kind of the one that'll happen most likely to you if it's a print outlet. You'll get just a straight up phone call from a reporter. That's fine. Same rules apply as everything else. But for a team or Zoom's call like this, you definitely want like a high quality microphone and a high quality camera to the best of your ability. Like I have an extra light here and a ring light above me. So if I go on TV, I'm bright and shiny like this, and they want to keep having me back because I have a high quality webcam and microphone. And these are things that you can get on Amazon for pretty cheap. Like I've got a microphone here that's $40, the ring light's 30. You set that up in your office, and then you're good to go every time that you have an interview, and that makes it um, that's an advantage too for the outlets. So they have good footage from you, and it looks good for their broadcast. And then another thing you want to maintain is eye contact. So you can see that I'm squared up with the camera here. I'm staring right down the barrel of the camera. When you are on Zoom and doing an interview, um, with a reporter or a journalist or for a broadcast, it might put your like the square box that you appear in, it might put that somewhere else on the camera, and your eyes will be drawn to look down at the boxes where you are. But sometimes you might have to just stare right into the barrel of the camera and get your point across because you want to be communicating directly with the voter and the viewer. If you are looking up or looking down, it doesn't really help. So you want to be able to get that point across. And communicate it clearly with your posture as well. Lighting, like I mentioned, that's something that you want to maintain well. It's not always possible to have the best background all the time or be in a place where a video call works great. I distinctly remember when there was a snowstorm in Toronto and Doug Ford did a FaceTime video call from the dash of his car on CP24. So he was literally looking down at his phone like this while he was driving. Totally illegal, but Doug can get away with stuff like that. Not all of us can. So those are things to watch out for because sometimes you won't be available. You won't be able to pull that off. But if you can get a good camera set up, that always helps. Aaron, I see you have your hand up there.
Yeah, I just wanted to share a question that popped into the Q&A function at the bottom. And just a reminder to everybody, if you do have a question, feel free to enter them anytime down at the bottom where you see the Q&A button. The question is, during interviews, sometimes it gets awkward and there's an awkward silence. How do you handle those moments of silence? Is it preferred to end the interview or open up another topic or conversation? I know we sort of spoke on that already. The second question that I have is, will the PowerPoint be distributed? And yes, it will be. It will be available at albertacouncilnews.com/webinars.
Excellent. So I'll take that one on first, and I'll throw it to you, Michaela. The awkwardness, you got to ride it out. Like that's like it's unfortunate and it is awkward, but that's their job. It's not yours. You are representing your community and your association or organization. The message that you have is the message you are communicating, and it can really be difficult. Like I've been there numerous times, but it's not your job to make things less awkward for a reporter. Trust me, the reporter's been in way more awkward positions than that. And you are probably a lot more sociable than a lot of the people they deal with. So it can be tough, but you got to write it out and just see where they take it. Because, like we said before, if you branch into a different topic, that can not go well for you, Michaela.
You covered it.
Oh, that well then there we go. That's it. So I'll move on to what not to do in this instance, and we've talked about this a little bit, but you kind of see the issues here, right? We have the subject looking down to the corner of the camera. It's blurry camera footage. I can't really see what's happening here. There's poor lighting, and it just kind of like this. This isn't the message that you want to communicate, especially when you're talking about a serious issue or something that matters to your community. You want to be able to be seen and heard, as brightly and as clearly as possible. Now, here's some tips for what to do after the interview. You want to thank the reporter or journalist, even if they weren't nice. You're gonna have to thank them because you're doing them a favor by giving them content for their broadcast or just their reporting, but they're also doing you a favor by platforming you. So it's always good to maintain a positive relationship there. Mark the name down of the producer who contacted you for the show or the journalists themselves and ask them when it will be broadcast online or when it will be published. You'll want to clip this stuff later just for your own use and reference. But then, you'll have it for your own use to promote it afterwards. And, down the road, Alberta Council will have, another webinar based on how to promote yourself and your news appearances on social media. But the thing is, you don't want one quote in the newspaper or one appearance on a TV show or on a panel to just live and die that day. If you are active in advocating for your community and there's a project whose funding you're announcing, or there's a local community initiative, you don't want that to just be online for one day or just to be mentioned in the paper one day and then gone the next. You want to be consistently promoting your work, which can feel shameless sometimes, but you got to do it so the most people know. And that's how you can continuously get your message out there and show that you're actually working for your community. So I think with that, that is kind of a quick run through of everything that I would suggest in terms of how to interact with the media, how to conduct an interview, just best tips and tricks and practices for this sort of thing. And I'm just going to open it up and see if we have any additional questions going on in the chat. Aaron, I don't know if you see any extras there
There's
or if
one
Michaela.
poll.
Sure.
It says, would it be appropriate to ask for a list of questions in advance of the interview? Um, it depends on the interview. I mean, you can shoot your shot. That's what you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, a la Wayne Gretzky's go. So I would say, I mean, you can ask. They're probably not going to give you those questions unless it's something that's like 20 questions, let us get to know you kind of thing, and it's like a very lighthearted interview. But if you have a journalist who's looking for a deep dive on a certain topic, um, they're likely not going to give you a list of questions. But worst case scenario, you ask and they say no. It's fine.
Yeah, it's not unexpected from a journalist
Mm.
for an interview participant to ask what the questions are going to be. But I will say two things. Like, so I appear on a regular political panel and they give us the questions in advance because, well, they could be talking about any issue under the sun. But this week, I know we're going to be talking about the Alberta-Ottawa MOU. I don't even have to ask. So when a journalist comes around, if whatever's in the news, you can make a good educated guess about what the interview is going to be about just because you're following the news. If it's way out of left field and it's something unrelated to any files that you cover or work on, you can also decline the interview. You don't have to say yes to everything. You can refer them to someone else, one of your, council or town colleagues who's stronger on a particular issue or has more experience with it. You can also hand it off to someone else, which is totally fine as well. And yeah, like a reporter won't be surprised to hear you ask for the question if you're participating on a panel. as a panelist and not as a official elected official, then yeah, I think you can fairly ask. If you are an elected official, they'll probably say no, especially if your staff asking. Michaela.
I would also just be say like, if you're getting into these questions as an elected official, you get into these situations where, you're in an interview situation and all of a sudden the journalist changes the topic and maybe you said something that led them down a rabbit hole because your talking points were in tight or whatever, however it happens. I would also say, it's okay to say, I don't have the answer for you right now, but can I get back to you? Can I get back to you with that?
Yeah.
And they actually like that as long as you get back to them. Now, if you do say, can I get back to you with that answer? And they say yes, make sure you get back to them so you keep that trust and maintain that rapport. But don't be afraid to say, I don't know. I'd be happy to look into that for you. Or I'd be happy to find someone who does know the answer to that question. It's a lot more humble and it looks better with your constituents and the journalist if you just end it that way.
Yeah, that I will like Michaela's absolutely right. Like I don't know is totally acceptable. Especially in the beginning of your career as an elected counselor or someone new to your role. I don't know is totally acceptable and it's a lot safer than winging it. Like you can get yourself into a lot more trouble like pontificating on something that you don't have full experience on and then you've got the wrong kind of news coverage that you might not want. I'm seeing two other questions here, so I'm gonna go ahead and ask these. Megan asks, any tips on ending an interview when the reporter doesn't want it to end yet? Well, that would be a case, I assume, in which you are in choppy waters and you want to end the interview. Um, it's tough in person. Like usually, if you know you are in for if you know you're going to be playing defense, let's say. So, I work on the conservative side as a pundit and a panelist, and I know I was going to be asked about Pierre Poilievre's comments about the RCMP. So I'm prepared to go in playing defense, but the panel is 12 minutes. So if we get started on this subject, it's likely going to take up the 12 minutes. So I am going to prepare myself for, I'm not saying I'm defending the opinion, but I will be in a defensive position answering the question based on the nature of the subject matter. So I will prepare myself to answer this question in full and be able to give multiple counterpoints, and then you kind of just have to ride it out. If no more questions is something that like saying no more questions is not something a politician or elected counselor can do. Staff can do that, but it has to be like way towards the end. And usually for press conferences or something like that, you're going to want to in the staff position indicate how many questions are going to be asked by what outlet and how many follow-ups they get just to make sure it's crystal clear. Then you can do no more questions. Otherwise, if you try to cut off an interview, the journalist will start salivating and know that you're sweating. So you really can't end it. They're kind of in control of that part, but that's why we do the advanced prep work to make sure that we're ready for those choppy waters. Michaela, do you have anything to add on that one?
Yeah, the other strategy you can take is to just, if you know it's could be a defensive interview, I mean, have staff with you to moderate. Use your communications people, use your administration to do that. And the other side of that, I would say, is going into the interview, let's say it's over the phone or even if it's in person, it's okay to say like, I only have till X time. And then the journalist is aware that you only have so much time and they'll likely cut it off themselves. But I mean, if you don't want to talk about it, the best way to do that is to just not talk about it, is to keep your answers really succinct. They'll get bored. They'll stop asking you questions. They'll stop pressing you because they know that you're not going to give them anything.
Yeah, if you know that there's something um, controversial, not even controversial, just a hot topic in the news that, doesn't work for you or doesn't work in your favor, if if you've decided in advance and written the strongest line that you have as a definitive catch-all response, and you're repeating that, to Michaela's point, the pressure will subside, and I mean that will be the line that they print because it's the only line you're saying. That might not always work, especially if you get buttonholed in a corner somewhere, but sometimes it's your best line of defense. I'm going to pop over here to another question. How do journalists and other media work with the communications position when doing interviews? Do requests to interview normally go through the in-house communication specialist? Should communication specialists write speeches for the elected official? On the last point, people usually collaborate on that. So if I was working for a politician as I have in the past, you would know your politician and your boss's style of speaking because eventually you're going to interact with them so much, you know the things that they like to say, the things that they don't like to say. So I would say a communications officer or a director of communications would work with a politician regularly, so they're kind of speaking from the same voice, and you'll need to do that in order to establish, a solid working relationship in order to get like enough work done. Because if you have so many speaking engagements, you have to work together on those things. And usually you'd have a press secretary coordinating media interviews with reporters instead of the politician. That usually goes for MLAs or MPs or anyone in the leader's office. You don't want the principal being the elected official, interacting directly with the journalist. Those are negotiations in terms of like time, format, questions that should be hashed out between the elected official and the communications staff member, Michaela.
I will say though, for some of you in smaller municipalities, you're not going to have this luxury
Yeah.
of having a go-between. So your journalist, for example, might be the same journalist who's been the journalist for 25 years, and they know you because they went to school with you, or your kids went to school with them, or whatever. And they have your phone number because they have it from Bake Sale or they have it from something else, right? And that we all know that story all too well, where the local journalist is just a part of the community. So, I mean, sometimes you don't want to push them through a communications person, and if you are comfortable enough, I mean, just answer the questions. But I think the one thing that we haven't said in this so far is just assume you're always on the record. There's no such thing as off the record. Anything you
Yeah.
can, anything you say will be held against you and printed. So just assume that whatever you're saying is on the record and take that as you will. It's kind of a best practice thing. But if it's a larger interview, like let's say if it's like a CBC or a CTV, they will probably by default go through the comms person because that's what they're trained to do. But for the smaller rural weeklies or something, just handle that's kind of a judgment call on your own relationship.
Yeah, to Michaela's point, you are always on the record, unfortunately. And one that I've fallen for myself is I've heard this from a couple other people, but I just wanted to confirm it with you. Don't answer that question. And if you want to say, well, who said that to you? And if they won't say, be like, well, I don't know, because they're asking you to confirm something that they might not have necessarily confirmed themselves. And journalists do this in order to try to confirm something that they otherwise can't. But otherwise, I don't think journalists need to be treated with a bunch of skepticism, especially on the municipal level. I don't think they're out to get us as much as some people think sometimes. But just having an honest working relationship with them, considering the fact that on the municipal level you will be interacting with them directly yourself, that's really the only way to go about it. So I see we have one more question here. What about municipal meetings that are live streamed? Any tips for that? In relation to considering that direction, if you know your video audio might have some struggles, better to do or not to do. Not an interview per se, but totally used by media to report on, or how to maximize the benefit that the media will use for reporting. Okay, so very good question. Having better video and audio increases the likelihood that a journalist will screen record and use what you said directly. And then the benefit of that is they'll be quoting you directly. They won't be paraphrasing your comments. They won't be interpreting meaning that wasn't there. You and they have a record of exactly what you said. So that works in your favor. And if you have video, there's a higher likelihood that they're going to use it because there's video to go along with what you're saying. If you're in a place where you're like, all right, I have a bad connection. I know it isn't going to work, and you're just attending a council meeting. I think it's fine to go camera off instead of having a pixelated image. As long as you can be heard clearly, I think that's fine. Just because you're going to want to take every opportunity you can to speak for your constituents and your community. But if you're having technical issues and connection issues, that's totally fine. That happens a lot. Michaela?
I would also say like town council meetings that are streamed or broadcast or recorded, treat them like a media interview. Treat them no
Yeah.
differently. Like you are we did this in the legislature, like you're always on camera, whether that person is in front of you through a camera, up in the gallery behind you. Like as an elected official, it's kind of incumbent upon you to just be very, very aware of your surroundings at all times. And that's not, to be overly skeptical and nervous, but that's just, present yourself in a way that if it was clipped, you wouldn't be offended to see your face on the news. Only make sure you're prepared all the time with what you're about to say. Once it becomes a matter of public record, it can be printed. So just kind of treat everything like a media interview if it's a council meeting. That would be my advice.
Yeah, to support Michaela's point there too, you really do never know who's watching, and if there's a reporter in chambers, they're waiting for something like that, right? Because that's something that people click on. So an offhand comment or something that just came to you in the middle of a chamber meeting might not might not work. So that's always something to keep in mind in terms of getting your best message across and practicing best practices. I think we have one more question. Michaela, maybe I'll let you start with this one. Are you seeing a shift away from live streaming council meetings or more toward same?
Hmm, I think it depends. Like, I mean, in Medicine Hat, there was a major drive. Transparency was kind of a theme of the last election. There's always, transparency is always a theme. Transparency, accountability. We hear the same things over and over again. But I think I don't know if it's more or if it's just kind of the world that I'm in, but I see more people going. I think there's a lot of people attending in person because they can, but most councils just by default do record their meetings and they will be posted anyway. So whether they're live streamed or not, that video footage can be downloaded and altered and used, right? So like I said, I would just assume that it could be used and present yourself in such a way that if it did, you wouldn't be hurt by it.
To add to Michaela's points here too, like you know, you're not just constantly playing defense. There may be something that you said in a council meeting where you're like, I made an excellent point there. I would like to promote the fact that I've made this point. And we'll have another webinar down the road about how to best promote your work in council and in media. But that might be something that you want to clip for yourself to promote on your own channels to say, here's the work we're doing for the ward or the constituency at large. And that's something you can use to highlight your city council work or your town council work because people aren't watching council meetings from front to back. So if you can clip moments where you are, performing at your best, that's something you want to be mindful of too. So you can so just like a media appearance, a council meeting doesn't live and die on that day. You can use the material from those meetings to promote your work and, hopefully bring in more voters and more supporters. And I think with that, I think we've answered all the questions we have. We kind of flew through it here, but I mean, in closing, I think this was sort of an overview for how to look at how best to interact with the media, some best practices, some initial tips and tricks. I think before we wrap up, Michaela, is there any last points you would like to discuss or go over?
I think my answer to that earlier was always say no to this question.
That's it. Do you
But
have anything else to add?
no, I just wanted to thank you all for joining us over your lunch. I know you guys have a lot going on and some of you are newly elected, so congratulations to you all on your election and we hope that we can be of service to you in the future if there's anything else you need.
Excellent. Yes. No, we are absolutely here to help everyone that's on this webinar and participated. If you need some help navigating this stuff, we're all certainly here to help. These are experiences that, like Michaela mentioned earlier in the webinar, it's been baptism by fire for a lot of us. So we can help you avoid the mistakes that we've made before. So thanks for coming and attending and listening to this webinar. Like we mentioned, we're available if you have any questions. The webinar will be posted online, so you'll get an email about that. And we'll keep you up to date with the next webinar. And we look forward to hearing from you again soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.